Hello, everybody. I hope that some people found its way to this highlight session at the end of the day. I'm aware that it was already a long day, a long afternoon, but that's a great opportunity to actually get a very rough summary of the highlights, especially of the workshop sessions. So some of you probably attended a few of the workshop sessions, but since they were parallel, you could not attend all of them. Our first workshop we heard today, or which was in parallel with others, was in Africa, for Africa, weaving solutions for textile circularity challenges. This summary will be given by Zubeida Zwavel, and you have to excuse my pronunciation. I did not rehearse well. It sounds very practical, actually. I like the title, so I'm very keen to hear about what you think from your workshop, and you will see some of the highlights.
Sure. So we had a very dynamic and exciting discussion, interesting, and also getting to know the different panelists and speakers. And the focus was obviously on the growth of the entire textile garment value chain within Africa and the challenges that goes with that. Challenges, support, and structures that are in place and that probably needs to be in place as well. So we had 4 panelists, 2 from Burkina Faso and 2 from Kenya. The 2 from Kenya are one is in the garment industry and one is has a huge retailer in Kenya, and the other one had, the other 2 were in ethical fashion and ethical sustainable goods within Burkina Faso, and they run a cooperative. The names of that, I'm sure you will find the details further. So the challenges that came up was your very typical challenges about the garment industry when, people speaking about when they're dealing with getting fabric from abroad and having those materials come there, and then they have issues of language barriers, things like that. So those were typical challenges that came up within the garment industry. But more broadly is the influx of the garments from abroad as well. Couple that with the secondhand goods clothing being sort of descending upon Africa and the different countries. And also that is fast fashion secondhand clothes, which creates a problem, ultimately being sold as secondhand goods within the different countries. But then, being a challenge, providing a challenge to the retailers as well. And then keeping the prices competitive in all this entirety, and in becoming looking at trying to identify what is the business case for sustainability will remain an issue, because prices with sustainability and criteria meeting all of that always becomes a challenge for, I think, every stakeholder within this textile garment value chain. Support that was asked upon is based on training on different levels, not just training from a stakeholder level from policy and government and retailers and technical training, but also from bottom-up approach, which focuses on training for consumers, wanting to create the need for sustainable goods. Something as simple as looking at, what are the impacts or the lowered impacts of wearing garments of organic cotton, for example. And then the capital investment, that's always something that comes up, I think, with every company requiring support in capital investment for equipment. And then also broadly giving access to brands to support the SMMEs as well. Solutions, and I think things that would also encourage, that is the growth of the textile garment industry in Africa, is the fact that there's this AGOA trade agreement which has been in place for many years, and that provides favorable tax incentives. That obviously gives provides Africa as a very good textile garment industry, and the growth of that is based on this trade agreement. And then also looking at growing partnerships with brands abroad. We actually had the retailers saying that they've got good access in their country, but accessing European and other markets and more developed country markets, and providing partnerships, international partnerships for that, was something key and would be quite advantageous to their organizations. And providing not only, I think, international partnerships, but also local or regional partnerships between the different countries, something as critical as getting, it's cheaper to get fabric from China or India than it is to buy across from their neighbor, which is, for instance, Ethiopia, for example. So these are things that actually needs to be addressed, and how can that actually, those partnerships then grow the industry in, I think, in a, to provide circularity, to provide more sustainable growth. And ultimately, I think the panelists and everybody was quite optimistic in the textiles garment industry growth, and also that it remains a collective responsibility, I think, with this to look at circularity continuously and try to look at different interventions along this value chain. So that was it in a nutshell. I hope I didn't take too much time.
No, that's excellent. Thank you very much. Very interesting. I think the whole textile topic is actually a topic which is also on the other side. I mean, on let's say on the other side, in other areas in the world, quite a big topic, and circularity, sustainability about textiles, and I think the notion of working more locally is definitely very interesting. So let's then move to the next one. And that's a workshop which happens also just an hour ago. Are the policies and the principles of the Basel Convention, the circular economy, compatible? And the summary will be given by Elisabeth Smith from STEP. Elisabeth, please.
Yes, I was just looking for the unmute button. Yeah, thank you, Matthias, for having us also to summarize the workshop, or how our workshop went. So we had a very interesting workshop around the discussion of the Basel Convention and how the Basel Convention and the concept of circular economy are actually matching, or how they are working together. So the workshop, in total, we had about 50 to 60 people attending, what I think is really great. Also, we had a great reach out. The workshop was structured in two parts. So the first part, we heard some input presentations, one from Daniel Hinchliffe from GSZ, who presented on a paper that is actually still in progress, and we hope that it will be published at the end of the year. And in this paper, we collect, or Daniel is the lead author, so he is looking at really the other side of the Basel Convention, if you want to say it like this. It's really what are the obstacles and what are the challenges that developing countries face when they want to export to OECD countries. So we all know that the core of the Basel Convention is really to avoid the trade of hazardous goods, especially from OECD countries to low-income countries, to avoid that the waste is dumped there, and that we have toxic and hazardous implications there in those countries, in those poor countries. But there is also the side that we have the situation that countries have the waste in country, and that they want to export it to OECD country, and those countries also face issues and challenges when they want to ship the waste. So the paper that Daniel presented is really looking into this, and collects also cases. So what he summarized basically is also that at the moment the environmentally sound management of e-waste is hindered in some points, or in some cases, because low-income countries do not have the facilities at ground, but also the shipment is very difficult. And that the conclusion, I think, is that we need to improve the process, that we need to make it easier to implement the rules and regulations of the Basel Convention, because this should still be the core of any trade that is happening. But then after this input presentation, a second input presentation was given by Isabelle Baudin from the Swiss Environmental Agency, and she presented the Swiss Ghana proposal, which is a proposal from Switzerland and Ghana, where they proposed to involve or include all type of e-waste as hazardous waste in the convention, so that they would have a better control over any waste that is moved from country A to country B. So it was also good to hear from her what are the backgrounds of this proposal. And after the 2 input presentations, we went into a panel discussion with very interesting key experts in the field. So we had Chris Lynggaard from MGG Polymers, who has really first-hand experience in trading waste, also in trying to get waste into his recycling facility. We had Jim Bucket, who I think most of you have heard of, who has really great in-depth experience in the Basel Convention, and who is also lobbying for stricter rules. Also, we had a representative from Ghana, Sam Adukumi, who raised also the voice from the people living in Ghana, and Kimberly Bodwright from the World Economic Forum. So during the discussion, we really tried to shed light on the issues that we face when we want to comply to the Basel Convention rules on the one hand, but also try to facilitate circular economy and what would be negative impacts of the concept of circular economy. So what I think was one of the key messages and one of the key takeaways that I had also is that we have to be aware that resources in developing countries, so also on the personal side of things, are limited. So we need to make it easier for them to comply with the rules, to also enable them to really control the waste and facilitate shipments and control the shipments that are taking place.
Thank you very much, Elisabeth. I was also attending the workshop. I think it was a very lively discussion. We had a lot of also questions in the chat and engagement. It was a good distribution, which is also always interesting, in the participation, people from Ghana, from Africa, people, recyclers. So that was definitely an interesting workshop, and thank you very much for this. So then we would move on to the next one, and that would be Abdulla. And there was the workshop from the African Circular Economy Network, setting the scene for African circular economy business platforms, lessons learned from Lagos, South Africa, and other international and also that was the Holland Circular Hotspot who co-organized this workshop. Please, Abdulla, the floor is yours.
Yes, hi, Matthias. Thank you for having me, and thank you for this beautiful initiative. We literally just finished our workshop. It went a little bit longer because the conversation kind of heated up at the end, so I'm kind of struggling to gather the inputs over here. However, our session was basically divided into 2 halves, or 20 minutes, then 30 minutes. The first 20 minutes, we were giving a presentation about circular economy hubs and our latest study for a circular economy hub in Nigeria, Lagos, that launched last week. A very successful event in Lagos, over 160 participants. And basically what circular economy hubs are, they're communities. They're communities of stakeholders that all strive for the transition towards a circular economy. And there's a lot of similarities between circular economy hubs and other types of communities. They offer a sense of belonging, knowledge sharing. They help actors move together instead of acting in isolation. Some of the key activities also of circular economy hotspots include networking and advocacy, sharing best practices through online and offline events, mapping the potential of circular economy and low-hanging fruits and opportunities within a specific region, sharing knowledge and capacity building and access to financing. We then went on to talk a little bit about our experience with setting up a circular economy platform with Lagos. Of course, this was done in cooperation with between the African Circular Economy Network and the Holland Circular Hotspot. And basically, in order to set up a circular economy platform, it's all about the stakeholders. So we start with a database of stakeholders, national and international. We send out surveys to them and then start to refine our database. In Lagos, we started with 145 participants. And we ended up with a steering committee of 13 committed stakeholders from different organizations. We engaged them in workshops and one-on-one interviews to kind of figure out how this platform is going to look like, because no circular economy platform is similar to the other. It's very context dependent. We try also to figure out the best format for it, the best legal entity and governance to follow through. We then went on to an interactive session with the audience, and the goal of this was to help the audience explore a little bit the world of circular economy hotspots and or circular economy hubs and how they can serve their own communities. But also it's important for us to kind of refine our process, refine our study, and learn something new for our next setup of circular hubs. Some of the input that came from the first of all, we started with a poll that asked our participants to categorize themselves, whether they resemble government or public, the public sector, business sector, or the private, or the knowledge institutions, or civil society. We had a pretty diverse audience with 21% from the public sector, 36% from the business side, knowledge institutions at 21% and 22% from civil societies. We then moved on to engage our participants in asking them about circular economy needs within their countries and how circular economy hubs can offer support, but at the same time, what are the barriers for implementing such initiatives in their countries? The topic of waste and plastic and e-waste comes up regularly. Of course, this is a huge problem, and this is also one of the main problems that the Circular Business Platform of Lagos aims to solve. Of course, circular economy is about designing out pollution and waste even before having to deal with the waste. However, most pressing issues, thing that is visible, the thing is that people can see in the streets with plastics blocking waterways, for example, or garbage on the street. That's where we have to start from. That's where a circular platform focuses the urgent need or the low-hanging fruit. Some of the barriers, let's say, for implementing such platforms or from benefiting from circular economy practices is the lack of knowledge about circular economy. People don't know what circular economy is and what can it offer. So this is also something, one of the value propositions that circular economy platforms offers, knowledge sharing. That's it. I think my time is up.
Thank you very much, Abdulla. Yeah, that was very interesting. I was also partially in your workshop, and I think it was a true interactive workshop. Actually, I saw that you were playing around with some interactive tools, which is probably online still a little bit tough to do, but I hope that it was beneficial for you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Then we would move on to Eloise Touni. It was UN Environment organizing a workshop on enhancing circularity in the electronics value chain in Africa. Please, Eloise, it's your floor.
Thank you, Matthias. Very nice to be here and to present the very short summary of our workshop. So I think, as you saw from the slide that popped up briefly, we were focusing on circular electronics in Africa, and well, kind of similar to Abdullah's comment that, you start where the low-hanging fruits are and the most visible kind of manifestation of an issue. So I think we started from the starting point of e-waste, which is undergoing enormous growth in Nigeria, where we were featuring a project that we're working on from Nigeria, but also in the wider Africa. So the panel, we had a very nice panel who all have worked together before, and some very nice questions came from the participants. So we spotlighted a project in Nigeria on e-waste, which is being delivered by the Nigerian government with support from UNEP and the Global Environment Facility. The project is really putting forward an extended producer responsibility scheme, which is the main recommended approach for a sustainable and long-term management of e-waste collection and improved environmentally sound recycling practices. So the first conclusion was that there's really a need for a policy or some kind of government intervention to mandate kind of collection system and especially a sustainable financing model for e-waste management. One of the panelists pointed out that globally, more than 2/3 of countries still don't have such a legislation or a policy or a kind of government mandated requirement to collect and treat e-waste. But even for the ones that do, which Nigeria is in the category of countries that have, they recently passed an EPR policy. Even the policy is not enough, because many of the panelists and a lot of the questions were highlighting the importance of enforcement of such a policy. So enforcement is a huge priority, obviously, for government, who has the main kind of responsibility for enforcing their policy, but it's essential for producers as well. We did have representatives from international producers on the panel, and they're the ones that are kind of trying to step up and take their responsibilities, and they were really calling strongly for a strong enforcement. So I think that was an important message that came through, and I think our colleagues from Nigeria, from the government, had some really great steps that they've taken forward, talking about linking the registration to the EPR system to kind of underlying registrations, for example, for import, getting import licenses, tax registrations for businesses and companies, and they were also presenting some proactive steps to engage big generators of e-waste, and they were giving the example of public sector rural electrification projects. The reality is that an EPR system, an extended producer responsibility system, is not an easy thing to create and enforce and make it happen in reality. And so we also had speakers that were kind of highlighting the importance of immediate and short-term and much smaller scale actions, which can kind of give a vision for a longer term shift and kind of build the commitment among the many stakeholders that is needed for like a long-term EPR kind of gold standard solution. And then finally, the more in keeping with the kind of circular economy is to remember that it's not only about treating with the waste, although that may be the kind of most visible and immediate concern for many countries, but circular economy really does require kind of a rethinking from the beginning to the end. And especially recognizing the huge value of the materials in electronics and the kind of scope there is for redesigning, phasing out different hazardous chemicals, which obviously the kind of problematic part of the e-waste. And there are kind of various options for that as well. So there's banning chemicals, obviously, but then levers such as sustainable procurement and choosing what you buy, and also kind of setting requirements for take back. And, you know, all of these life cycle stages can have very feasible, you know, and immediate actions that stakeholders can already start taking. So I think it was very nice discussion. There were a lot of solutions that, you know, from easier to harder and more long term. And I think the kind of main message was to just take immediate steps even, and, you know, keep an eye on the long term as well. And then, you know, there were the whole side event was organized by UNEP and kind of a occasion to launch and promote a circular a regional guidance on African circular economy for electronics sector. So we'd be happy to share that link when it comes. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks a lot, Eloise. Actually, that links a little bit to something we're going to listen tomorrow. Tomorrow, we will have a plenary session on the topic of EPR, and if EPR needs to be extended or to global EPR, or if it needs to be updated to consider better circular economy. It's not just focusing on e-waste. Of course, plastics is a big topic as well. So I think that links quite well to this. Thank you very much. So then we will get to our last speaker today. That's a workshop organized by UN Environment Program GRID Geneva, the elephant in the room, the extractives room, sorry, the neglected value of sand. In German, we have a saying, wie Sand am Meer, and this is like sand at the sea, and this is like, it's anyways abandoned. You can never get rid of it, and that's probably something Josefine would argue it's not like that. So please, Josefine, please go ahead.
Well, thank you for the introduction. Yes, well, in our discussion, we had quite a rich conversation around how sand here, how it's rarer than one thinks, and how it should really be considered a strategic resource in need of global governance and environmental sustainability. And so in this hour, we touched upon discussions around especially sand supply, the need to monitor alternatives that are out there already being tested and tried out. The need for awareness raising and education, is equity governed sand management, and especially the unsustainable sand extraction rates and the accompanying ecological and social societal impacts that are being documented globally. In terms of the panelists, we had quite a rich and diverse list of experts among us that were working along the entire value chain with sand resources, which really provided that background information we needed. And they were capable really of showcasing existing solutions, namely the case of byproducts from mining waste that are already out there, resource mapping efforts in the Netherlands, or even innovative governance mechanism for sand monitoring in Kenya. And in terms of the messages that we really got from these sessions and moving forward, we will take forward in our work is there's really a need to transition away from the current business context we're driven by limitless sand extraction and towards a new paradigm, putting the emphasis on not only equity, inclusion, but also cost effectiveness and how we source, we use, and we manage sand resources. And so perhaps in line a bit with the theme also today at the World Resource Forum in striving for fair resource extraction in a prosperous future, at UNEP GRID, we're really calling for an integrated policy and legal framework that is not only driven by robust, but equitable and responsive institutions. And we would say they have to have two characteristics. And this really came forward in this discussion we had the last hour, that not only for one operates at regional levels, but it also recognizes that there's a need for a comprehensive umbrella framework to manage this precious resource. And second, that it's a framework that makes the market space for alternative solutions to sand extraction. Whatever way we regulate this natural resource and its extraction, its use, and its management, we need to take into account that there's an adequate space for market space for alternatives. And this requires thinking of an alternative livelihood strategy for the small, the medium, and the artisanal communities that also depend on sand extraction, and ensure that there's no one left behind in this concept. we discussed that there's good news. There are many solutions out there, and we need to rethink how we upscale these alternatives away from the current sand extraction. So a promising discussion with lots to think about ahead. And please stay tuned, because we will also be reporting following from today's roundtable and this workshop in terms of guidelines that could guide this work forward. Handing it back to you, Matthias.
Thank you very much, Josefine. Yeah, it's very encouraging to hear that you also find good solutions and discuss good solutions, because that's all about the conference, not just discuss about the problems, but focus on solutions.
We need to remain positive.
Yeah, great. Okay, so thank you very much. I saw there was also a little bit something going on in the chat, a link to JRC and the RMIS, that's a Raw Material Information System, so that there's a new focus on also African data. It's very interesting. Please have a look at the chat. And I would like to just quickly close this session. And would like to point you towards what's happening tomorrow. Tomorrow in the morning, we will have, so that's the morning session, we'll have the Swiss event. That's an in-person event at the EMPA in Switzerland. A Swiss person would know what EMPA is and where that will happen. But these sessions will also be live streamed. The focus is on primary resourcing. First plenary being fostering sustainability in commodity trading and finance, the role of transparency in technology, and the second focusing on green mining. Can we move from vision to reality? We actually will hear something about sand from UNEP GRID as well in the closing session of the Swiss event. In the afternoon, we will go back to online only. We'll have a focus in the plenary, as I mentioned already, on recovering resources from post-consumer products, about responsibility and opportunities. We will talk, and that will have a focus on the issue of global EPR. And then we will go through parallel sessions where there will be a lot of very interesting workshops and scientific sessions, as well as we had them today. And then we meet again for the day 2 highlights at the end of the day. With this, I thank you for your participation. Wish you, depending where you are, a very nice rest of the day. For some of you, this might have been the first session normal working time, and for the others, this might be really the last hour they spent in front of the computer. Thank you very much, and have a very nice day.